I never imagined my life would come down to a contract. Not a court document or a custody paper, but a private agreement drafted by billionaires, written in sterile legal language, deciding whether my daughter would live a normal childhood or spend her life in hospitals. The beeping of the heart monitor had become my metronome, each chirp a reminder that Noelle was still here, still fighting, still breathing. I sat in that blue vinyl chair, the one with the torn armrest and the permanent coffee stain, and watched my 8-year-old daughter sleep under fluorescent lights that never truly turned off. Her chest rose and fell, steady, for now. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and failure. I'd memorized every crack in the ceiling tiles, every scuff mark on the linoleum floor. This place had become more familiar than my own apartment, more real than anything waiting for me outside these walls. My name is Caleb Rowe. Before all of this, I was just a single father trying not to fail the only person who mattered to me. I was failing anyway. 3 weeks ago, Noelle had collapsed during a school assembly. One moment she was standing in line with her 3rd grade class, singing some song about autumn leaves. The next, she was on the gymnasium floor, her body seizing, teachers screaming, children crying. I got the call while I was under a sink in some lawyer's McMansion, fixing a leak that probably cost more than my monthly rent. My hands were covered in pipe grease when my phone buzzed. The school nurse's voice was calm, practiced, terrifying. "Mr. Rowe, there's been an incident." Incident. Such a clean word for watching your child's body betray her. The diagnosis came fast. Brutal. A rare autoimmune condition with a name I still couldn't pronounce without stumbling. The doctor, young, competent, and utterly devoid of comfort, explained it in terms that felt like a foreign language. Antibodies attacking healthy cells. Progressive deterioration. Experimental treatment required. Not covered by insurance. Not subsidized by compassion. The cost was staggering, 7 figures. Minimum. I sold my truck first. The Ford F-150 I'd bought used but maintained like it was a Rolls-Royce. Then my tools, the good ones, the ones my father had given me when I started my plumbing business. Then everything else that had any value. My watch, my guitar, my dignity. It wasn't enough, not even close. I called my brother in Nevada. He stopped answering after the 2nd message. My ex-wife's parents, who'd barely acknowledged Noelle's existence since their daughter died 4 years ago, sent a sympathy card with a Target gift card inside. $25. Noelle stirred in the bed, her small hand reaching for mine even in sleep. I took it, felt how fragile her fingers were, how paper-thin her skin had become. She'd always been strong, too strong for a kid who'd already lost her mother at 4. But strength doesn't protect you from biology. The door to the hospital room opened. I expected a nurse, maybe the night shift doctor doing rounds. Instead, a woman in a tailored charcoal suit stepped inside. She didn't knock, didn't apologize for the intrusion. She simply entered like she had every right to be there, her heels clicking softly against the floor. She was maybe early 40s, with dark hair pulled back so tight it could have been painted on. Her face was all angles, sharp cheekbones, defined jawline, eyes that didn't blink often enough to seem entirely human. Everything about her screamed money. Old money, the kind that didn't need to announce itself. She stopped at the foot of Noelle's bed and looked at my daughter with an expression I couldn't read. Not pity, not curiosity, something else, something calculated. Then she turned those eyes on me. "Mr. Rowe," she said. Not a question, a statement. I stood up, suddenly aware of how wrinkled my shirt was, how I probably smelled like hospital coffee and fear. "Who are you?" "My name is Maribel Cross." She extended a hand. Her grip was firm, brief, transactional. "I apologize for the intrusion. I know this is a difficult time." "Then maybe you should come back when it's not." She didn't flinch. "I'm afraid I can't do that. We're on a schedule." "We?" Maribel glanced at Noelle again, and something flickered across her face. "How much do you know about your daughter's treatment options?" My jaw tightened. "Enough to know I can't afford them." "You've liquidated your assets. approximately $43,000. You've applied for medical loans from 6 different institutions, all denied. You've started a GoFundMe that's raised $8,000 in 2 weeks. She recited the numbers like she was reading a grocery list. You're $31,000 into debt and falling further behind every day Noelle stays in this hospital. The blood drained from my face. How do you know that? Because I make it my business to know things, Mr. Rowe. She moved closer, her voice dropping. You don't need charity. You need a solution. I wanted to throw her out, wanted to scream at this stranger who'd invaded the worst moment of my life with her clinical assessment of my failures. But I didn't, because she was right. What kind of solution? I heard myself ask. Maribel reached into her bag, leather, expensive, probably worth more than my car had been, and pulled out a slim folder. The kind that saves your daughter's life, she said, and solves a problem of mine. She placed the folder on the table beside Noelle's bed. I stared at it like it might explode. I don't understand. You will. Maribel checked her watch, platinum, minimal, the kind of timepiece that cost more than most people's yearly salary. But not here, not now. I'll be in the hospital cafe for the next 30 minutes. If you're interested in hearing my proposal, meet me there. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, Mr. Rowe, I hope you do. Because without me, your daughter has approximately 6 weeks before her condition becomes irreversible. The door closed behind her with a soft click. I stood there, frozen, staring at the folder she'd left behind. 6 weeks. My hands were shaking when I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a treatment plan for Noelle, experimental therapy, specialists, facilities I'd never heard of. At the bottom, a cost estimate, $1.4 million. And beneath that, in Maribel Cross's precise handwriting, fully funded. I looked at my daughter, at the IV in her arm, at the monitors tracking her weakening body. Then I walked out of the room and headed for the cafe. Maribel sat in the corner booth, a cup of black coffee untouched in front of her. She didn't look up when I approached, didn't seem surprised I'd come. She simply gestured to the seat across from her. I sat. You have questions, she said. About 1,000. Then I'll answer the only one that matters. She folded her hands on the table. I'm one of the wealthiest private investors in the Pacific Northwest. My portfolio includes technology companies, real estate ventures, and biotech firms you use every day but have never heard of. I'm worth approximately $3.7 billion. I blinked. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to understand that money is not my problem. Her eyes locked onto mine. Perception is. She explained it methodically, clinically, like she was presenting a business proposal to a boardroom instead of a desperate father in a hospital cafe. Maribel Cross had built her empire on discretion. No scandals, no drama, no personal life that could be weaponized against her. But now, a former business partner, Graham Lorne, was attempting a hostile takeover of her company. His strategy wasn't financial, it was personal. He was painting her as unstable, unfit to lead. A wealthy woman in her 40s with no husband, no children, rumors of family estrangement. To the board of directors, she wasn't a visionary, she was a liability. Graham is leveraging traditional values against me, Maribel said, her voice flat. The board responds to optics. A family man is trustworthy. A single woman is a question mark. So you need a husband. I need the appearance of stability. She corrected me like I'd mispronounced a word. Not a boyfriend, not a partner, a marriage contract. The absurdity of it hit me like a physical blow. You want to hire me to marry you? For 1 year. Public appearances, charity galas, board dinners, interviews, controlled displays of affection. No intimacy clause, no emotional entanglement, absolute secrecy. And in exchange, I cover every medical expense Noelle will ever have. Treatment, specialists, experimental therapies, recovery, education, housing during treatment, everything. I laughed. It came out broken, slightly hysterical.
Then I cried. Then I said no.
Maribel didn't react. She simply took a business card from her wallet and placed it on the table. "You have 48 hours to decide," she said, standing. "After that, the offer disappears." She walked away, heels clicking against tile, leaving me alone with an impossible choice. I went back to Noelle's room, sat in that torn vinyl chair, watched her sleep, tried to convince myself there had to be another way. My phone rang at 2 in the morning. The hospital. Noelle's attending physician. Her condition was progressing faster than expected. Fear does something ugly to pride. By sunrise, I'd made my decision. The penthouse office where I signed the contract felt like another planet. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, furniture that probably cost more than my yearly income, art on the walls that I didn't understand but knew was important. Maribel sat behind a glass desk, perfectly composed, while a lawyer I'd never met walked me through 47 pages of legal language that essentially turned me into property. Page 12 specified how we would hold hands in public. Page 19 detailed acceptable displays of affection. Page 23 outlined the frequency of staged arguments to maintain relational authenticity. There were subsections, footnotes, contingency clauses. I was becoming a prop in a billion-dollar chess game. "Initial here," the lawyer said, pointing to line after line after line. My hand cramped by page 30. When I finally signed the last page, Maribel didn't smile, didn't shake my hand. She simply nodded to her assistant. "Wire the first payment to Seattle Medical. Priority treatment begins tomorrow." Just like that, my daughter's life was saved, and mine stopped being my own. The first training session happened that afternoon. Maribel's publicist, a sharp woman named Diane who spoke in sound bites, walked me through the performance. How to stand beside Maribel, how to touch her arm casually, how to smile like I meant it, how to lie so convincingly that cameras wouldn't catch the fraud. "You're not in love," Diane said, adjusting my collar. "You're comfortable, familiar. Think old married couple, not honeymoon phase." I felt like I was learning choreography for a play I never auditioned for. Maribel watched from across the room, her expression unreadable. "We have our first public event in 3 days," she said when Diane finally released me. "A charity gala, 500 guests, full media coverage." My stomach dropped. 3 days? "You'll be fine, just follow the script. And if I mess up?" For the first time, something almost human flickered in her eyes. "Then we both lose everything." She turned to leave, then paused. "One more thing, Caleb." She looked back at me. "Graham Lorne will be there, and he'll be watching." The charity gala was held at a waterfront hotel that probably had its own zip code. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, people in tuxedos and gowns that cost more than my truck had. I felt like an imposter in my rented tuxedo, the bow tie strangling me, dress shoes pinching feet more accustomed to work boots. Maribel appeared beside me like a ghost. She wore a midnight blue gown that probably had a designer's name I couldn't pronounce. Her hair was down for the first time since I'd met her, falling in dark waves over her shoulders. She looked stunning. She looked terrifying. "Ready?" she asked. "No." "Yes." Her hand slipped into mine. Her skin was cool, her grip firm. We walked into the ballroom together. Cameras flashed immediately. I forced myself to smile, to stand straight, to pretend I belonged in this world of wealth and power and scrutiny. Maribel was flawless. She worked the room like a conductor leading an orchestra, charming donors, greeting board members, introducing me as her husband with such casual confidence that I almost believed it myself. "Caleb works in residential infrastructure," she'd say, which was apparently billionaire speak for plumber. People shook my hand, asked polite questions, looked at me with barely concealed curiosity. I played my part, smiled, laughed at jokes I didn't find funny, touched Maribel's lower back the way Diane had taught me. Then Graham Lorne appeared. He was tall, silver-haired, expensively dressed. He had the kind of smile that never reached his eyes, the kind politicians practiced in mirrors. "Maribel," he said, his voice smooth as poisoned honey. "What a lovely surprise." "Graham." Her voice didn't change, but I felt her hand tighten slightly in mine. His eyes slid to me. "And this must be the famous husband I've been hearing about." He extended his hand. I shook it. His grip was designed to intimidate. "Caleb Rowe," I said. "Graham Lorne, old friend of your wife's." The way he said wife made it sound like an accusation. "Tell me, Caleb, how did you two meet?" I'd practiced this answer, rehearsed it a dozen times with Diane. "Through mutual friends," I said. "Last year, it was pretty immediate." "How romantic," Graham's smile widened. "And you're in plumbing, is that right?" "Residential infrastructure," Maribel corrected, her voice sharp. "Of course," Graham chuckled. "Quite the fairy tale. Billionaire and the handyman." The insult was wrapped in politeness, but it landed like a slap. Maribel stepped closer to me, her arm sliding around my waist in a gesture that looked protective. "Caleb understands the value of things that actually work," she said coolly, "unlike some people who just break them." Graham's smile faltered for half a second. Then he recovered. "Well, I wish you both the best, truly." He nodded to someone across the room. "If you'll excuse me." He walked away, but I could feel his eyes on us for the rest of the night. A photographer approached as we stood near the champagne fountain. "Mr. and Mrs. Cross," he said, camera ready. "Mind if I get a shot for the society page?" Maribel's hand found mine again. "Of course." We posed, her body against mine, my arm around her waist, her smile perfect. "How about a kiss?" the photographer asked. "For the romance angle?" My heart stopped. Maribel turned to me, her face inches from mine. I could see the calculation in her eyes, the performance. She leaned in. Her lips hovered near mine, close enough that I could feel her breath. Then she whispered, so quietly only I could hear, "Don't forget what we're really doing here." She kissed my cheek instead. The camera flashed. The photographer thanked us and moved on. Maribel stepped back, her composure perfect, her mask firmly in place. But for just a second, I'd seen something underneath. Fear. The first 3 months of our arrangement passed in a blur of carefully orchestrated lies. We attended 12 public events, posed for 47 photographs, gave 3 interviews to lifestyle magazines where we talked about finding balance and building a life together. I moved into Maribel's penthouse. A bedroom was prepared for me on the opposite end of the apartment from hers. We had separate bathrooms, separate schedules, separate lives that only intersected when cameras were present. Noelle started treatment at a private facility that looked more like a resort than a hospital. The doctors were optimistic. Her numbers were improving. The experimental therapy was working. I should have been grateful. I was. But I was also drowning. Living with Maribel was like sharing space with a glacier. Beautiful, distant, impenetrable. She left for work before I woke up, returned after I'd gone to bed. We communicated through her assistant, shared meals only when photographers were scheduled. Until the day everything changed. I was at Noelle's therapy session. Weekly check-ins had become our routine when Maribel appeared in the doorway. She'd never come to one before. Noelle's face lit up. "Maribel!" My daughter had taken to Maribel immediately. Maybe because Maribel treated her like a person instead of a patient. Maybe because kids sense things adults try to hide. "Hey, kiddo," Maribel said, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. She sat down beside Noelle's bed, and for the next hour she listened to my daughter talk about her day, her dreams, her fears. When Noelle asked Maribel to help her with the puzzle she'd been working on, Maribel didn't hesitate. I watched them together. Watched Maribel's careful fingers placing puzzle pieces. Watched her smile, genuine, unguarded, when Noelle cheered at completing a section. It was the first time I'd seen her human. A week later, Maribel asked if she could join us for dinner at the hospital. Then it became twice a week. Then she started missing board meetings to make Noelle's therapy sessions. One afternoon, I walked into Noelle's room and found Maribel attempting to braid my daughter's hair. She was terrible at it. Noelle was giggling. Maribel was laughing, actually laughing at her own incompetence. "I'm better at hostile acquisitions than hair," Maribel admitted, fingers tangled in blonde strands. "It's okay," Noelle said patiently.
Daddy's not good at it either.
I stood in the doorway watching this impossible scene. Maribel caught my eye. Something passed between us. An acknowledgement. A crack in the armor. That night, back at the penthouse, Maribel didn't disappear into her office. She poured 2 glasses of wine and sat across from me in the living room. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For letting me be part of this." She gestured vaguely. "Noelle, she's remarkable." "She is." Maribel stared into her wine glass. "I never thought I'd be good at this. The family thing." It was the most personal thing she'd ever said to me. "You're doing fine," I told her. She looked up, and for a moment the mask slipped completely. I saw loneliness, regret, hunger for something money couldn't buy. Then her phone buzzed. The moment shattered. She stood.
I should get back to work.
"Maribel. Good night, Caleb." She disappeared into her office, and the glacier returned. But the crack remained. Over the following weeks, the distance between us continued to shrink. Maribel started eating breakfast in the kitchen instead of her office. We'd have coffee together, talk about Noelle's progress. Occasionally, we'd laugh at something stupid. One morning, Noelle called from the hospital. She'd started doing virtual school and wanted to share something she'd learned. When she saw Maribel on the screen beside me, she said it without thinking. "Hi, bonus mom." Maribel froze. I saw her eyes glisten, just for a second. Then she smiled. "Hi, sweetheart." After the call ended, Maribel sat very still. "Are you okay?" I asked. "I didn't think—" She stopped, started again.
I didn't think I'd ever hear someone call me that.
"She loves you." "I know." Maribel's voice cracked. "That's what scares me." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. The message was simple. "We know the truth." My blood went cold. "What is it?" Maribel asked. I showed her. Her face went pale, then hard. "Graham," she said. That night, neither of us slept. The next morning, Child Protective Services knocked on our door. The CPS agents were polite, professional, terrifying. They had received an anonymous report, allegations of neglect, concerns about Noelle's living situation during treatment, questions about the sudden marriage and whether it represented a stable environment. It was a masterclass in bureaucratic violence. I sat across from 2 agents who asked questions designed to trap me.
How long had I known Maribel?
Why the quick marriage? Could I provide financial records? Character references? Every answer felt like walking through a minefield. Noelle was at her therapy session, thank God. She didn't have to see this. The lead agent, a woman with tired eyes and a clipboard, finally looked up. "Mr. Rowe, we need to be honest with you. These allegations are serious. We'll need to conduct a full investigation. Until then..." The door opened. Maribel walked in like a force of nature. She didn't ask permission, didn't introduce herself. She simply stood between the agents and me, her entire body radiating controlled fury. "This interview is over," she said. The lead agent blinked. "Ma'am, we're conducting an official investigation. Based on fabricated allegations from a source you won't disclose. Legations designed to harass my family during a medical crisis." Maribel's voice was ice. "My lawyers will be here within the hour. You'll provide documentation of every claim. You'll identify your source. And you'll explain why CPS is being weaponized for corporate espionage." "Ma'am, she is my family," Maribel said, her voice steady but her eyes blazing. "My daughter. And you will leave. Now." The agents exchanged glances. They left. When the door closed, Maribel's shoulders sagged, just slightly. I stared at her. "How did you know they were here?" "Building security alerted me." She pulled out her phone. I'm calling our lawyers and private investigators. If Graham wants war, he'll get it. Maribel. She looked at me and I saw something I'd never seen before. Genuine fear. They came after Noel, she said quietly. Graham crossed a line. This isn't just business anymore, is it? No. Her voice broke on the word. It's not. For the first time since I'd met her, Maribel Cross looked vulnerable, and the contract between us felt like paper. Over the next 2 weeks, Graham Lorne's attacks escalated into psychological warfare. Private investigators tailed me everywhere. They photographed me leaving Noel's hospital, followed me to the grocery store, showed up at the penthouse building asking neighbors questions about our marriage. Threatening letters arrived, anonymous emails, a suspicious package that turned out to be nothing but sent security into lockdown for 3 hours. Maribel hired a team of former Secret Service agents to protect us. Lawyers worked around the clock. Her public relations team went into crisis mode. But Graham was relentless. He leaked carefully edited photos to gossip sites. Pictures of me and Maribel at separate events before we'd met. Evidence, he claimed, that our marriage was a sham. The board started asking questions. Shareholders demanded explanations. The hostile takeover gained momentum. Through it all, Maribel remained outwardly calm. But I saw the cracks, the sleepless nights, the weight loss, the way her hands shook when she thought no one was looking. One night I found her in her office at 3 in the morning, surrounded by documents, eyes red. You should sleep, I said. Can't. She didn't look up. The shareholder summit is in 6 weeks. If Graham presents his case and the board votes against me, I lose everything. The company? Everything. She finally met my eyes, including Noel's medical funding. My stomach dropped. The contract is funded through my corporate holdings. If Graham succeeds, those assets get frozen or liquidated. The medical payments stop. I felt like I'd been punched. Why didn't you tell me? Because I thought I could win. Her voice cracked. I thought I could protect all of us. I crossed the room and sat beside her. We'll figure it out, I said. How? Maribel laughed bitterly. Graham has something. I don't know what, but he's too confident. He has leverage I haven't found yet. She was right. 3 days later, I discovered what it was. An unmarked envelope appeared in my mailbox. No return address. Inside, a single document. A medical record from 23 years ago. Maribel Cross, age 22, pregnancy termination. My hands shook as I read the clinical language. The procedure. The date. The doctor's notes about her emotional state. At the bottom, a handwritten note. Thought you should know who you really married. Graham. I sat in my car for an hour staring at that paper. Then I went home and waited for Maribel. She arrived late as always, exhausted, barely holding it together. I showed her the document. The color drained from her face. Where did you get this? Her voice was barely a whisper. Graham sent it to me. I paused. Is it true? Maribel didn't answer immediately. She walked to the windows overlooking the city, her back to me. When she finally spoke, her voice was hollow. I was 22, in my first year at Stanford Business School. I'd worked my entire life to get there. Scholarships, student loans, 80-hour weeks while my classmates partied on their parents' money. She wrapped her arms around herself. I got pregnant. The father was a teaching assistant. When I told him, he said it wasn't his problem. My family, conservative, religious, they would have disowned me. I had no money, no support, no way to finish school and raise a child. So you chose your career. I chose survival. She turned to face me, tears streaming down her face. I chose wrong. The anguish in her voice was devastating. I've carried that shame for 23 years, Maribel continued. Built walls so high nobody could see the truth. Became so successful that maybe it would justify the choice. But it never did. Maribel, Graham knows. He's going to expose it at the shareholder summit. He'll frame it as moral failure, proof I'm unfit to lead. Unstable, selfish. She wiped her eyes roughly. And he's right. No, he's not. Caleb, I abandoned my own child to build an empire. What does that make me? Human. I stood. It makes you human. Maribel shook her head. The board won't see it that way. When Graham reveals this, it's over. Then we fight back. With what? The truth? She laughed bitterly. The truth is my weapon against me. Silence fell between us. Then Maribel walked to her desk and opened a locked drawer. She pulled out our marriage contract. What are you doing? I asked. Ending this. Her hands trembled as she held the document. I'm tearing up the contract. Maribel, no! Graham wins either way. If I fight, I lose the company and you lose Noelle's funding. If I step down now, I can negotiate a severance that protects her medical care. You'd give up everything? For Noelle? Maribel's voice broke. Yes. She reached for the paper, ready to destroy it. I caught her hand. Don't. Caleb, I'm not leaving. The words came out fierce, surprising even me. We're in this together. You don't understand. When this gets out, then we get ahead of it. We control the narrative. We show them who you really are. And who is that? Someone who made an impossible choice and has spent 2 decades trying to be better. Someone who saved my daughter when no one else would. Someone who learned to braid hair and laugh at terrible jokes and show up even when it's terrifying. Maribel stared at me. I didn't hire you to pretend, she whispered. I hired you because I wanted to believe I could be different this time. The contract fell from her hands. She stepped forward and did something she'd never done before. She hugged me. Not for cameras, not for performance, just because she needed to. I held her while she cried. And somewhere in that moment, our fake marriage became something else entirely. The shareholder summit was held in a downtown conference center with glass walls and too much natural light. Hundreds of investors filled the auditorium, camera crews positioned at strategic angles, financial journalists poised with their laptops. Graham Lorne sat in the front row, perfectly calm, perfectly confident. He knew he'd won. Maribel and I sat together in the designated seating area. Her hand was cold in mine, not for show this time, for courage. The board chairman called the meeting to order, went through preliminary business. Then, we have a special presentation from Mr. Graham Lorne regarding leadership concerns. Graham stood, smiled, took the stage. He started with praise, acknowledged Maribel's accomplishments, her vision, her success. Then he began the attack. However, he said, his voice carrying perfectly, leadership requires more than financial acumen. It requires moral clarity, stability, transparency. He clicked to the first slide. Ms. Cross has presented herself as a paragon of corporate ethics, but her personal life tells a different story. Another slide. Photos of Maribel and me at events before our marriage. A fraudulent relationship designed to manipulate board perception. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Another slide. The medical document. And perhaps most concerning, evidence of moral judgment that calls into question her fitness to lead this organization. The room erupted. Camera flashes, shocked gasps, board members whispering urgently. Maribel sat frozen beside me. Graham continued, his voice rising over the chaos. I present this not to shame, but to illuminate. We deserve leadership we can trust. Stop. The voice was small, young, clear. Noelle walked onto the stage. The room fell silent. My daughter, 8 years old, in her favorite blue dress, still too thin from treatment but standing straight, looked at Graham Lorne without fear. Then she turned to the audience. My name is Noelle Rowe, she said, and Maribel saved my life. I hadn't known she was coming, hadn't prepared her for this, but somehow, she was here. I got really sick, Noelle continued, her voice steady. My dad sold everything to help me, but it wasn't enough. We were going to lose. Then Maribel came. She looked at Maribel in the audience. She didn't have to help us. She didn't even know us. But she did, because that's who she is. Noelle turned back to Graham. You're saying she's a bad person because of something from a long time ago. But people can change. People can be scared and make mistakes and still be good. The room was utterly silent. Maribel didn't save me because she had to, Noelle said, her eyes bright with tears. She saved me because she wanted to, because even though she was scared, she tried to be different. She looked out at the hundreds of people watching. Isn't that what matters? Not who you were, but who you choose to be. No one moved. Then someone in the back started clapping. Then another. Then the entire room erupted in applause. Graham Lorne stood frozen at the podium, his carefully constructed attack crumbling around him. The board chairman stood. This meeting is adjourned pending a full investigation into Mr. Lorne's conduct and the sources of his information. Security escorted Graham from the stage. Maribel stood, walked to Noelle, dropped to her knees and held my daughter while the cameras flashed and the room watched and the world saw something real. When Noelle finally pulled back, she looked up at Maribel with those wide, honest eyes. You're still my bonus mom, right? Maribel's voice broke. I'm just mom now. 3 weeks later, the board completed their investigation. Graham Lorne was removed from the company. Criminal charges were filed for corporate espionage, harassment, and falsifying CPS reports. His empire collapsed within days. Maribel was cleared of all allegations. The board offered her a renewed contract with expanded authority. She declined. I need to build something different, she told them. Something real. She stepped down by choice. Not in disgrace, not in defeat, but because she'd discovered something more valuable than power. She'd discovered family. We stayed in the penthouse, but it felt different now. No more separate bedrooms. No more performance schedules, no more contracts, just us. Noelle's treatment continued. Her numbers improved every week. The doctors started using words like remission and recovery. One evening, 6 months after the summit, we sat together in the living room. Noelle was doing homework. Maribel was reading. I was pretending to watch television, but mostly just watching them. Noelle looked up from her math problems. Dad, can I ask you something? Always. Are you and Mom going to stay married? I glanced at Maribel. She set down her book. We never actually got married, I admitted. It was just pretend. Noelle frowned. But you love each other now, right? Out of the mouths of babes. Maribel smiled. Yeah, kiddo, we do. Then you should do it for real. Noelle returned to her homework like she'd just solved the simplest equation in the world. Maribel and I looked at each other. She's not wrong, Maribel said. No, I agreed. She's not. We got married 3 months later. Nothing like the first time. No gala, no cameras, no performance. Just us, Noelle, and a judge in a small courthouse downtown. When the judge asked if we took each other, we said yes, and meant it. I never imagined my life would come down to a contract, but I learned that sometimes the roles we're forced to play reveal who we truly are. That fear and desperation can crack open spaces for unexpected grace. That the walls we build to protect ourselves become the prisons that keep us from living. Maribel built an empire to prove she was enough. I sold everything to save my daughter. We both discovered that the thing we needed most couldn't be bought or negotiated. It could only be given. The contract that brought us together was destroyed. The marriage built on lies became a foundation of truth. And somewhere between survival and surrender, a fake family became the realest thing either of us had ever known. Noelle still calls Maribel Mom. Maribel still can't braid hair worth a damn. I still fix things for a living, though now I run my own company. We're not perfect. We still argue, still struggle, still carry scars from the battles we fought to get here. But we're real. And that's worth more than any contract could ever be. Sometimes the thing you hire someone to pretend becomes the truth you were afraid to believe in. Sometimes the best deals aren't negotiated in boardrooms, but discovered in hospital rooms and quiet moments, and the brave voices of children who see the world more clearly than any adult ever could. Sometimes you don't find family, you build it, one impossible choice at a time.